Hey, okay, we are live now. Yeah, I guess we should get right into it. We had so much stuff to go and get into today. So much
Well,
stuff.
I'll say this because I got a number of for some reason I just had to start off the show like this.
Yes.
I got a number of messages. My phone blew up at around 6:30 on Saturday because apparently the Hockey Night in Canada cameras for the pregame scanned the crowd. There was a crowd around where the Leafs were coming out for the pregame skate. And like everybody and their brother was wearing Leaf garb except this guy in a long black coat with the receding hairline, and that happened to be me. And I was just sort of like staring out into space, looking at the ice because there was nobody out there, and everybody was saying to me, "Mike, cheer up." And I'm like, well, why should I cheer up? Because the Leafs are in Buffalo and they never win there.
That is awesome. I love that. That's so great.
and again, they come to Buffalo, and
yeah,
I call it the graveyard on the Niagara.
No, that's been their Achilles heel. That's awesome. All right, let me get my notes up here real fast. Violated on Mondays. Crazy. I took a beating this weekend in my on my predicting thing. Just absolutely destroyed. Really, just completely the worst weekend of my career as far as my Buzztron 9000's career. Buzztron 9000 I think needs a reboot or something because it's completely lost it after going 17-0 and after such an exciting start. Now it's 95-91.
Peter, you know where I think Eck got the parts for the Buzztron 9000? Do you remember that game back in the 70s and early 80s called Merlin? The one where it was like a
yeah.
Okay, he got it's either pieces
from this, Mike. Blip.
Yeah, I was gonna say Blip, Merlin, Coleco football and hockey. That's where the Buzztron 9000 must have come from.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you guys remember Blip?
Yes.
No, I don't remember Blip. I remember the Coleco football.
Blip was amazing. Blip was the funniest thing because, okay, this is how it works. So this is a good little free show. So basically it was Pong, okay, but in handheld form and only 3 places you could actually return the ball from because it actually inside here is an actual light LED that goes back, a bulb that goes back and forth. And you, if it was over here, you could hit here to return it, here to return it, here to return it. You'd serve like this. There's a timer like that, so actual timer.
Yeah, I hate to tell you, Ak, you know what happened to my version of Blip? I was playing against somebody else, and obviously, and I hit the 2 buttons at once, and of course it didn't register like I had pressed the right one, so I took the game and threw it against the wall.
Oh, that's smart. I know. I had everything, all these kind of games. Obviously I still collect arcade games. So this is one of my favorites. This is one of my biggest things ever. All right. All right. Oh, cool. Let's start the show. Sorry, just getting a text there. Let's get this going. All right. The date is.
It's on the bottom of the screen.
I know.
Tell them to stop texting you. We're having a show here.
Yeah, sorry about this, guys. 1 second. Got it. Hold on 1 second.
Well, Peter, all I can say is that my friends were like worried about me after the game because basically it was like, you looked so depressed before the game. I'm sure after the game it was even worse. I'm like, no.
Oh yeah, well, but par for the course, right? Your expectations were already set.
Yes,
like, you knew which way it was going to go.
Low, completely low.
Yeah, low.
This is a case of one team that has another team's number. And usually, but even this year, I mean, they have been so bad as of lately. Crazy. Anyway, let's start the show. Here we go. Ready?
Yep.
We'll just do Mike and then Peter, right?
No,
okay.
Peter then Mike.
Peter then Mike.
Me then Peter. Yeah, that's correct.
You then Peter, right? I thought there's you then Peter.
No, I always lead off. Yeah.
Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, March 27th, 2017.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Peter Tessier.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And a lot of crazy-ass weekend. Sorry, just like so many weird upsets, so many strange things happen. But let's start with the Maple Leafs and Sabres game, Mike, because you were there, as many people noted, and and we talked about this before because the Maple Leafs were playing such good hockey. They were taking apart teams that were better than them, teams that were way ahead of them. But you said Buffalo is going to be a problem, as they always are, and they were.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the Sabres are the 30th place team in the league or if the Leafs, are on a 12-game win streak. When they go to Buffalo, everything that's Leaf-related goes to die. And this is the thing. 75% of that building was Leaf fans. A lot of Sabre fans, because the Sabres are out of it, have dumped their season tickets and, either sold them on StubHub or some other service, or went down and sold them to the entrepreneurs outside the KeyBank Center. So everybody cashed in, and it was absolutely packed with Leaf fans. "Oh Canada" was sung much, much louder than the U.S. national anthem. The Sabres got booed when they came out for the opening skate. And that sort of fueled the Sabres, because when you see Jack Eichel score a power play goal in the second period and he searches out Leaf fans along the glass and slams himself into the glass and then spits on the ice in front of them, you get the idea of why Buffalo plays well against the Leafs, because they work themselves up into a lather and the Leafs never show up.
Yeah, crazy game, crazy. I mean,
Go
ahead, Peter.
I was going to say two favorite things from the weekend were the slow motion GIF of Eichel going into the boards. That was all over Twitter, and just staring him down. And then the other one was from last night of the guy doing push-ups on the dumbbell tower while the guy was shooting baskets in the back. I mean, they both had their own sense of comedy in the most unusual ways, but that was great. It's fun to see, and I think, we need a little bit more of that from NHL players when that moment strikes them. Who cares if the Sabres are out? Eichel had his moment to throw it in some fans' faces, and good on him. And he made it.
No, Peter. I mean, I think that contributes to the rivalry. I mean, this should be one of the best rivalries in hockey. These teams should hate each other. There should be blood on the ice, and there's not. It's been a one-sided rivalry for 47 years, ever since Punch Imlach got fired by the Leafs, started as general manager and coach of the Sabres, and basically, I think probably it was bulletin board material. You beat the Leafs, I'll give you some extra money. I bet you it was anything like that. And they have dominated the Leafs for most of those 47 years. The Leafs have gone 2-18-1 in Buffalo in the last 21 games. That is obscene.
Yeah.
And the thing is that the whole part of it was sort of lost in terms of its importance in the game when, at the beginning of the second period, Frederik Andersen doesn't come out for the game. Curtis McElhinney comes out for the second period. And all of a sudden, and it's sort of played out this morning in Toronto, all of a sudden now the big concern for the Leafs is not, do we finish in third place or do we finish in the second wild card? It's, can we hold on for the playoff spot? Because Frederik Andersen apparently had a jaw injury, and he tried to practice this morning. He skated before the practice. He played for about 20 minutes, then left the ice. They called up Garrett Sparks from the Marlies. Curtis McElhinney is starting against Florida in every game this year. If there was a day of rest in between the game, Frederik Andersen started. Now with 8 games to go in the regular season, Curtis McElhinney is starting, and this is the same injury that Frederik Andersen had last year with Anaheim. He had a jaw injury, shot from practice, didn't play for almost 2 weeks, and John Gibson started the first 2 games of the playoffs for the Ducks. So this is now, I think, a bit of a reason for Leaf fans to be worried.
Oh yeah. I mean, like we've said the whole time. I mean, and we will get to the Leafs because I know we're getting a lot of complaints about talking about it. But they're a story because they're a bubble team, and right now all bubble teams are interesting, and they're also they also have Austin Matthews on them, and there also are one out of every three of you guys out there are Leaf fans. We doing our research, it tends to be the case. That's probably a little exaggerated, but what I'm saying, it's kind of crazy. I will get you the real number. They also called up Kasperi Kapanen too.
Yeah,
I once owned. I have to always say this when Kapanen's name is mentioned. I once owned him in street hockey when he was 6, living behind my in-laws' house.
He's never lived that down. Actually,
I completely. I inside outed him on a move, with a Milek orange hockey ball that that I'm sure he remembers to this day.
Yeah.
He and his brothers, but he was 6.
Still recovering. He's still recovering.
I also saw Kramer from Seinfeld own a bunch of kids in karate, but that's revenge is coming. Revenge is coming.
Good reference. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Kapanen, and we'll get off the Leaf page here, but Kapanen probably would have been recalled a lot earlier than now based on how he was playing in the first half of the season, but he got low-bridged by Jake Dotchin, one of the now a Tampa Bay Lightning defenseman in a game in Syracuse in early January, and it cost him 7 weeks of the season, and he's been playing very well. He's point-per-game guy in the AHL. He's a really good prospect. He'll play on the fourth line, but just shows the depth of the Leaf organization. They can call up a guy who was a first-round pick who's having a good year. He's 20 years old, and this is, he played at the end of last year, but this is could be his big chance.
That was 14 years ago. He just made me feel really old. Yep. So, and one of the teams I want to touch on, and this team is really it's amazing. Every year, if there's one team in the NHL that you could say every year no one talks about, no one considers, and then when the playoffs come around, everyone's like, we should think about that team. What is that team?
Calgary Flames.
Nope. Close. I mean, it's a good guess, but this team is
even. Who I'm thinking of now.
But everyone talks about Calgary. Calgary's got. This is a team that everyone's like, you know what?
The Minnesota Wild.
No, the Wild are. They're a story because, of course, they're playing horribly right now. But they're, they really have. They're 2-7-1 in their last 10. No, this team. Everybody's counted out. I've even heard that people say, I want this team to fall into the wild card. That's not going to happen. There's no way. I'm talking the Anaheim Ducks, okay? Oh. Every year, the Anaheim Ducks do the same thing, right? They come out, they're like, they're there, they're playing okay, they're pretty good, and then suddenly they're 8-1-1 in their last 10. Getzlaf, check this number out. This is incredible. Getzlaf has 27 points in his last 19 games. All right, so remember when we talk about Getzlaf, Getzlaf's over the hill, he's just losing it. He has 27 points in his last 19 games in March is pretty unbelievable for a player of his age or whatever. He's killing it. This team, I mean, the Ducks are, and they're winning that division flat out. People say, we want them to fall. We would like to see the Anaheim San Jose first. That's not going to happen. There's no way you're going to get Anaheim San Jose, or you're not going to get a Calgary Edmonton first round matchup either.
Well,
unless San Jose falls out, I guess it could happen that way, right? San Jose could fall into the wild card, but that's the only chance.
The story that's sort of lost here, and of course I've been tracking it because it's connected to the Leafs, is the ascendancy of Jonathan Bernier as possibly the number one goaltender in Anaheim. He's 7-0-1 in his last 8 games.
I know.
And Gibson was hurt. He came back. He got hurt again. And, I think Randy Carlyle has intimated that he may go with Bernier in the playoffs, which just boggles the mind for people in Toronto because, Bernier played terribly after the first year inconsistently. But I keep going back to the fact that it wasn't Bernier. It was the fact that the players in front of him were clueless.
And most people who think of Bernier, who aren't Toronto focused, don't think of Bernier as a Maple Leaf. I still think of Bernier as a King. I really do. Like I still think of him as him. I think of that duo. He was a great duo there, part of that team. So.
Well, right, but I mean, he was really. I mean, yes, he was a first-round pick of the Kings, and he played well at times with the Kings. But he got his break. He got his chance to be a number one goaltender with the Leafs. And
that time to be a number one goaltender with the Leafs is not exactly the best break in the world.
Well, no, but the Bernier thing is kind of a funny thing. You know what it kind of reminds me of? Not because of who he was behind in LA, but more because of how they managed him. It was a lot like Corey Schneider.
Yeah.
He's needed a place that he's going to get something to show his skill and see what happens. In Toronto, when he came there, wasn't ready for Bernier. I don't think the organization was ready. I don't think the structures were there. I think if you put Bernier back in there now, you're seeing something different. Not that should be an equation for them, but the guy's got talent.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be picked up by someone this year, and he's going to start seeing that rise in his fortunes. There's no question.
He's not
to me.
He's not, and he still has a lot of game. The thing about Bernier with me that always is amazing is when I think of him now playing, and when I think of him with the Kings, and this is so weird. I know it's not gonna make any sense. It was like he was 3 inches taller than when he played with Toronto. Like when you watch him play, it's just because he's not, I think it's part of his stance and part of his confidence is that he stands up higher and when he's actually a more confident goalie. In Toronto, he was down a lot, he was crouched a lot. But watching him the other night for Anaheim, he looks like a big goalie, and I don't think Bernier's a big goalie, but he has a feeling like he looks like a big goalie.
He's 5'11" in terms of his stature, but I think maybe it's the goaltending coach.
5'11" is like the exact size that a goalie could look tall or small. Like that's like right around because if he's upright in his stance, but if a 5'11" goalie is slouching too much in his stance, then you have space. That's for sure. So he.
The other thing too with that, you're talking about size. Maybe he's adapted because of the way the new pants are and some of the equipment.
Yeah.
And I think as we roll into these changes that are going to happen with goalies, if it keeps going further, I think we're going to see a real making of what kind of goalie can adapt to this stuff and be a better goalie and has to change as opposed to ones who rely on their old tendencies and using the size thing that the gear, like a Ryan Miller, for example.
Right.
That could be a contributing factor, Peter. But I really think more than I think there's a level of confidence now that he's regained. But I think it's more the fact that his top two centers are Getzlaf and Kessler. He's got Lindholm, Fowler, Vatanen, Bieksa as his defense, and in Toronto he had Phaneuf and nobody else, and Phil Kessel and Tyler Bozak was number one. I mean, the teams in terms of their construction in Anaheim, they're so much better, and they're so much better defensively than they were at most of the time in his tenure in Toronto that I think he can succeed there. And the ironic thing is that Toronto could very well benefit from Bernier. If Bernier plays in 50% of the playoff games and they get to the Stanley Cup final, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility,
right?
They get a second or a third round pick out of the trade that basically they were dumping his contract just to get rid of it. So, Leaf fans will be rooting for Jonathan Bernier and the Ducks to succeed.
Yeah. I wanted to get into we're going to talk more about this tomorrow, but the NHL players, the American players saying they're not going to go to the World Championships is a story we have to discuss in solidarity with the women.
Yeah.
This was broken by our buddy Alan Walsh and then it's gained some more steam since then. And I'm proud of the American hockey players for doing this. I think this is a good call. The World Championships are an easy thing to do it for as well for a lot of them, because World Championships are basically, what if you're an American player or a Canadian player that's sort of on the bubble to being considered an Olympic player, you go to the World Championships to try to impress, and you just take your wife or your girlfriend with you for a fun vacation for a couple weeks after the season, and you just hang out. It's not. It's that kind of.
I'm not sure how much. I mean, let's just say this: USA Hockey should do right by the women's team. They should adjust what they're doing accordingly to match what Hockey Canada is doing. That being said, the pressure of the men saying that they're not going to the World Championship isn't exactly big pressure. Look at the team that went to the World Championship last year in Russia. Other than Austin Matthews and Dylan Larkin and maybe one or two other players, it was guys like Matt Hendricks. So it's not star players that are threatening not to go. It's players sort of middle of the road players. So just do right by the women players and get this thing over with, because it's a public relations disaster.
It's such a simple thing to fix, and that's what's so bizarre about it. And I mean, I think the thing that we need to really sort of compliment the men's side of the equation on is that they're striking while the iron's hot. They're not letting it die. They're making a point. But I mean, if you're Mike, to your point of not bringing in star players, are the perks the kind of the incentive to say, well, come over to Europe for a few weeks, hang out here, this will make it worthwhile, as opposed to relaxing on the golf course or going onto the beach? Is that what they have to do to get the men to show up? And if that's the case, your women's national team has had way more success than your men's national team. You should be given the perks of them just based on performance. And traditionally, when you look at amateur sports or pseudo-amateur sports, such as things like the Olympics, the American programs have been the leaders in compensation for rewards, for performance rewards for that kind of stuff. The ladies' team, the women's team for the United States hockey should be getting those rewards because they perform.
Yeah, they have performed.
Look, it's a small pool. They perform. And frankly, you could talk to a lot of hockey fans up in Canada. They'll take watching the Canada versus U.S. women's 9 times over 10 out of some random NHL game in the middle of the season for the quality of hockey and the way they play it.
Sure, because there's national pride. There's national pride in it involved.
Yeah. No, that's really true. I think if nothing, I mean, I don't think this is a big threat as much as it is like you said, Peter, just keeping the conversation going, and also just giving, getting the press to talk more about it because of the NHL players. So, and I'm glad about that. I think that's really important right now. And I have heard, I did talk to somebody today who told me that they know a 16-year-old player, women's player who's a really good player for the Americans. Now, obviously, he's younger than the players that are currently on the team, 16, who was contacted by the U.S. women's hockey program about coming to this tournament. So they are, for what it's worth, it does sound like they are going the scab route to a degree, or at least starting it, the process of bringing in replacement players.
And the thing is that the enticements that you were talking about, Peter, those can be used for the World Championships. I'm not exactly sure where they are this year, but in terms of the men, like, if you can't get players to go because they're boycotting because they're trying to show solidarity with the women's team, well, then you can get college players in that and say, well, hey, it's a vacation in Germany or wherever it is. Yeah. And then you can get players that way. So if USA Hockey is intent on not bowing to the demands of women's hockey, this could get uglier much longer. I just wish that this is an embarrassment, and I hope that they do right by the women's team because I think they deserve it.
How much do you feel members of the current women's team would hold it against players for crossing the picket line here? Because this is a really small, close-knit world. Okay, these players, anybody who the U.S. is calling up to go to this tournament has knows the players who are already there, and also probably tried out for the team and didn't make it, and was there. And there's always bitterness about that kind of stuff that goes on. People think they deserve to be there, so there's going to be people who cross. I think it's going to. I wonder if they can get enough. I wonder if there'll be solidarity among the women in the situation. There's a lot of really things that we don't know, because women, I think, are more principled than men. I just want to throw that out there. You might see women not cross.
If the community is as close knit as it is in Canada, and it resembles any kind of the network that permeates the NHL, be very, very cautious about making that choice.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it could have irreparable damage down the road. Like, if this is, you think, your only shot to do it, and you're prepared to have a big black mark on the top of your head for the rest of your hockey career,
right? You
probably do it. But other than that, I'd be very cautious.
I'm with you. I mean, the ones who do it are going to be the ones who feel like they've been screwed at some point or another for not making the team, or feel like they should be on that team because these kind of teams, these national teams. I know the women's soccer team. I know that really well. I know people who cover that really intensely, and there is nothing more. I mean, some of the people who believe they should be on that women's soccer team really will tell you that the women's U.S. soccer team is so much of this popularity contest that that you can never break into it, that it's completely locked down. And I think I'm sure that exists in hockey as well. It's just because it sucks when there's only one team in the entire world, that they can aim for, like that this is it, for a U.S. women's player. I mean, you can play in the, the WNHL and all that, but I think that this is really it. The U.S. team, that's the pinnacle. So when you have one team like that and all the people who do it, it's really hard. I will see what happens with it, but let's get into a little bit into the standings here because of where we are right now.
sorry, Mac. I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah, I was gonna say let's talk about the East for a second because the weekend, it was really a sort of a hodgepodge of a weekend because the Islanders go into Pittsburgh with Yaroslav Halak in goal and beat the Penguins in a I think it was in a shootout. It was in a
shootout, and you knew that was coming. You knew that game. I mean, I didn't like I said, I don't predict games. I'm projecting with my computer, but I was so mad when my computer told me that the Penguins were going to win that game because I knew that the Halak would beat the Penguins in that game.
And on two of the shootout attempts, Halak was beaten and didn't know that he had stopped the puck and was looking around to find the puck, and it didn't go over the goal line. So they do that. They win this big game, and then the following day against Anton Khudobin, because Tuukka Rask was either sick or something happened. There's sort of shrouded in mystery. Khudobin goes in, and Riley Nash scores 2 goals, and the Bruins win 2-1. And now the Bruins are only a point behind Toronto. They're 2 points ahead of the Islanders. You've got Tampa at 81 points. So you've got 4 teams within 4 points. This is a race. It's not over. And the specter of Steven Stamkos potentially coming back with Tampa keeps hanging out there as a possibility because he's still practicing with the team. But he came out this weekend and said he's not going to play unless he's 100%. And I don't know what that means, but they keep hanging around. So we got a race.
Or with knowing Steven Stamkos going into that last weekend, they're a point out. You can see Stamkos totally, the way he is, he'll step it up and play.
And thinking about how close that is with the Leafs, I mean, their ending schedule is not very pretty.
Oh no.
It's they play Florida on tomorrow.
Yeah.
Then they're at Nashville. They get we'll see what they can do in Buffalo again. They get chance for redemption. But then they finish out at home. Washington, Tampa, Pittsburgh, Columbus. Have fun with that.
Yeah,
and on.
In terms of winning percentage, they have the most difficult of those 4 teams, most difficult schedule. And the thing is that all those teams, Washington, Columbus, Pittsburgh, they're all within 3 points of each other right now. They're all battling for home ice for in the first round or maybe throughout the playoffs. So they're not going to Washington's not going to sit Holtby or Ovechkin. Pittsburgh is not going to sit Crosby. Columbus will probably want to win that game on Sunday. So and the 2 road games, it's the last game at Joe Louis Arena for the Red Wings against the Leafs. And it's Buffalo. And I'll tell you right now, you don't think the Buffalo Sabres want to stick a hot fork in the back of the Toronto Maple Leafs? Are you kidding me?
Perfect for them. I know. This is so looking at my my projected standings. This could be, and that's based on the whole fact that we have these my projected standings take into account who they're playing, very much so, how they do in certain buildings that they play in general. And the streaks that they're on and how much rest they have, and basically from game to game, which plays into it. So this is how it has it coming out right now, which is it's tight, but you can sort of see it. So it has Columbus, finishing in second there, Pittsburgh third, but then when you look at the bottom here, it has Tampa based on regulation wins eking into that third spot.
Yeah, I mean,
they're tied according to this. Now again, one of that, I'll throw this out there right now. It has Tampa beating Chicago tonight. Okay, now Tampa has in general played incredibly well against Chicago, so that's why it's having that. That if Tampa loses that game to Chicago, Toronto's right back in that spot.
Well, Chicago lost to Florida 7-0 on the weekend, so there's probably going to be a little bit of a bounce back there for the Blackhawks, unless the Blackhawks are sort of slumbering before.
That's what's happening because Minnesota's not putting any pressure on the Blackhawks, so they're sitting there going in, and they are, and this is a team that knows when to. They're such a mature team. They know when to pull the pedal off the metal there. So they're not playing their hardest games right now. I mean, you can tell. So Tampa's got to win this one. Tampa historically has played well against them, and this has the Islanders who still have a very easy schedule left. Coming in above Boston. This is so Boston and Toronto finishing out of it in this according to this. Now this, like I said, the thing to look on this is and then we'll move on. But the thing to look on this is really projected as to what should happen. And last weekend, like I said, I went 3-13 based on that. Based on the fact that teams are just beating out teams that they usually don't beat. And at the end of the season, that's the norm. Like you'll see crazy, outcomes right now. So, I mean, I think that Toronto still has a very good shot, and if Tampa loses this, they'll be right back into it. And the Islanders, they have to pick it up as well, but they've got an easy schedule.
Well, the funny thing here is that at the end of the season, the NHL schedule makers, I think, purposely try to make sure that all the games are inter-conference instead of intra-conference.
Yeah.
So, that's why the Leafs are playing, Tampa, Washington, Pittsburgh, Columbus, all in the Eastern Conference. But the one common thread, the one team that could have an effect on who makes the playoffs and misses the playoffs in the East is the Nashville Predators. They play Toronto, they play the Islanders, and they play Boston all in the next week or so. So it's before the end of the season, the Nashville Predators could have a say on who makes it or misses it.
And when you throw that into account here, looking at the Western Conference projected, so Nashville's in there at this point as well in third. This is sort of how this could play out here, but this and Anaheim, is running away with it according to this.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the rest of their schedule is pretty darn easy unless they just fall apart completely. They're going to be, and Chicago, Minnesota. I mean, that's based on Minnesota doing what they should do. So Minnesota's not going to win. It almost has Minnesota winning every game that's left because technically they're better. They have better records and good records against those teams.
Well, Peter, the one interesting thing about Boston, and I talked to Russ about this over the weekend. There's a lot of talk about the Bruins trying to get Charlie McAvoy, their first-round pick, the kid who played for Team USA and played really well for Team USA in their win over Canada at the World Junior. They're trying to get him signed so they can put him in the lineup. And the question is whether – that shows – I think he's a great prospect, but it also shows a level of desperation on the part of the Bruins that their defense is so bad that they need Charlie McAvoy right now.
Yeah, it does. Boston's been such a curious case all year of sort of, the ins and outs of what they've done, the rise of Marchand, just their roster, everything. They're and their management. They're sort of a study in oddity. Everything is odd about the Bruins, and everything they try and do seems to be met with like a head-scratching kind of moment. And bringing McAvoy is just another one in sort of a long list of head-scratching things. They've got a chance. They might make it. They might not. But why double down at this point? I don't get it.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it's clearly desperation on their part. And let me just illustrate. It's even more important regarding Nashville than I thought. Nashville plays the Islanders twice. They play the Islanders twice. They play the Bruins and they play the Leafs. So the Nashville Predators are going to be the gateway to the playoffs for one team in the Eastern Conference.
Or they might be. The bad thing for Nashville is they're not exactly assured a spot.
No.
And the bad thing for Nashville could be is if they've got to play these desperate teams, they can't just sit and coast through and say, oh, we're playing spoiler. They could be just turfed right out too. That is a very interesting storyline that I don't think anyone's picked up on. I didn't really think about it until you brought it up, Mike. That's a real possibility for the Preds, and that would be a disaster for them.
Well, let's categorize the disaster.
You can catch them, right? Because honestly,
right. They're not
Winnipeg or LA, right? So those are the only two teams that can get in there.
They're not in danger of falling out of the playoffs, but they're basically in danger of facing Chicago in the first round, which is as good as falling out of the playoffs. So that's the danger. And right now it's Calgary.
You're right. That's kind of what I meant, is slipping out of the top three. Yeah, it'd be a long shot to not make the playoffs as opposed to lose their spot. Yeah, my mistake. Absolutely.
This is the first year that I feel like there's no difference between the two divisions out west. Like I feel as if it doesn't. I feel like if I'm taking Chicago. Okay, Chicago is Chicago, right? They are definitely the team to beat. Every projection I run right now has them getting to the Stanley Cup Finals. Through all the playoffs. They have a great record. The Kings are the one team that can give them problems, but in the playoffs, but they don't look like they're going to face them. But you take Chicago out. After that, you go Minnesota, Nashville, St. Louis. All right, versus Anaheim, San Jose, Edmonton, Calgary. I think they're pretty close after that. I don't feel like Minnesota. I feel like Minnesota and Anaheim are basically at the same level right now. And I would say, after that, you go you want
I think Minnesota, Anaheim, and San Jose are at the same level.
Yeah, I'd say that too. And Edmonton and Calgary, they're both have played incredibly well lately too. So, and the Blues are the Blues. The Blues are good. This feels like the year that the Blues just shock everybody in the playoffs, right? Like the Blues, like every year you expect the Blues to do so well in the playoffs, and this year for some reason,
I don't get that feeling, but to go along with that feeling, do you really think that right now the Chicago Blackhawks at 102 points leading the Western Conference really want to face the St. Louis Blues in the first round after they lost to them? So they're probably praying that Nashville takes a dive at the end of the year and they play them, because I think they could beat them a lot easier, even though you've got Pekka Rinne over Jake Allen and maybe a team that's we know that the Predators have some strengths, but I think it'll be more of a wide open matchup, whereas I think the Blues and the Blackhawks will be another Central Division bloodbath.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with that.
Here's a question on that. Hang on. Who would the Blackhawks rather face then? Would they rather face the Blues or would they rather face the Flames?
The Flames.
The Flames?
Look at that.
I think the Flame. I'll tell you right now, the team that wants the Flames badly is Anaheim, because Calgary I think hasn't won in Anaheim since the first George Bush administration.
No, that is true. There's a crazy statistic there, right? So I'm gonna look.
True.
I'm gonna look and see what we have here as far as who some of these teams want to play. Because I think that.
But. While you're looking that up, the thing is that there has to be a little bit of a concern. Maybe if you're going to have a really bad losing streak and look bad, it's good to have it happen in mid to late March and not mid to late April. But I watched a bit of the Minnesota-Detroit game. I was sort of forced to yesterday. And right now, the Wild have lost their mojo. I don't know what it is. Devin Dubnyk let in a goal on a point shot that he just looked to the heavens and said, "Really?" He has not played well. The team seems a little bit burned out from the pace that they had kept for the first 60 games, and it could be just a bit of a downturn, and they're ready to go for the playoffs. But I think Minnesota fans have to be a little bit concerned because they just have lost it lately.
Well, I think they have to be very concerned. Some of the statistics on Minnesota are insane. Like in their slump, I had this Minnesota statistical slump. I pulled up. All right, this is Mike Russo's tweet. He says, the opener to February 28th, they were first. They were first 11.2 shorthanded percentage, second with 3.38 goals per game. And second with .924 save percentage. Shooting percentage, not shorthanded, sorry. 11.2 shooting percentage, 3.38 goals per game, .924 save percentage. From March 1st till now, they're 29th with a 6.7 shooting percentage, 25th with a 2.21 goals per game, and 28th with a .886 save percentage.
So for the analytics people out there, their PDO went in the crapper in March.
And here's something else, though. You know what else is hitting Minnesota is they're playing catch up now. They were so far behind in games played. They played 14 games in 25 nights.
Yep.
Yeah.
In March.
Yeah.
They played 11 games in 28 days in February.
Wow.
They played 14 games in 31 days in January. It's fatigue. They're catching up. This is and being in the Central, we saw this because the Jets were so far in front of everyone in games played in the West and even the league for so long. And I remember seeing this, and it said, looking at it and how the Wild were coming on, and people are going, no, the catch-up period is in March. Let's see how they feel then. And a lot of Jets fans, and media here were saying, you'd rather get out ahead and not have to catch up late in the season, even with this week off thing. And I think it's just caught up to the Wild. That's a ton of games.
To that point, Peter, really they're locked in second place. They're 7 points behind the Blackhawks, so they're not going to catch them. They're 8 points ahead of Nashville and 9 ahead of St. Louis. So they're stuck in second place in the Central. If I was Bruce Boudreau, and I'm not, I'm not following them game by game, so he might already be doing this. I would give, guys like Koivu and Stahl and Parise and Suter a game off here or there down the stretch, get them some rest, and get ready for, I think it's April 11th or April 12th when the playoffs start, because that's when your season begins. And if you're Bruce Boudreau, you need those guys energized in a Game 7 that they potentially will play in, because we know what your record is in Game 7s, Bruce.
Yeah.
All right, so to answer your question on Chicago and who they'd like to play, who could possibly stop them, right? I have the system in my program that ranks basically based on the last 3 years they played, gives them anywhere from a 0 if they've never beaten that, if they've lost every game to that team, to a 3.0 if they've won every game to that team. Okay, so 1.5 means the teams are basically evenly matched in the middle. So Chicago, you go through against Calgary. Chicago's a 2.5, so they've done very well against Calgary. Like the Blue Jackets, for example, the Blackhawks are a 1 against, which is, so that's that anything less than 1.5 means the other team has the advantage. But then going across to the other team we talked about, which was St. Louis, right? So St. Louis, they are 1.75. So 2.5 Calgary, 1.75 St. Louis. So you're looking at really interesting stat. They play the Penguins coming up, right, this week. They haven't lost to the Penguins in 3 years. Just in regulation, and I mean in the regular season, solid straight up 3.0. So, they're really, I'm trying, the teams that they have played, the Chicago, one of the keys to their success is when you go through this, Carolina 1.5. Okay, that's kind of strange, right? Columbus 1, like I said. Next lowest number you go through here, Philadelphia 1. San Jose. No, San Jose. Yeah, San Jose. They've dominated, right? 1.6. Sorry, 1.6. Philadelphia 1. Tampa Bay a 1. So that's why this thing's obviously picking Tampa tonight. So you go through this thing, and the teams that they've struggled against, when you look at the comparables, are all in the East.
Yeah.
St. Louis is about as good as you can get at 1.5. That's really for for them. I think LA is. I remember LA being close too. LA is.
And the thing is that it has nothing to do with the quality of the Calgary Flames that I think Anaheim or Chicago would probably prefer to play them. It's the fact that you've got a lot of young, inexperienced players. You've got a team with, even in spite of the fact that Brian Elliott has played well the last month and a half, they've got questionable goaltending compared to Nashville or compared to St. Louis, although, there are questions about Jake Allen. I think it's a favorable matchup for a top seed to want to play Calgary. They'll never say that, obviously, but that's, I think, the team that they would want to play against. It's not out of the realm of possibility that, there's enough talent there in Calgary that they could stage an upset, but if I were the Blackhawks or if I were the Anaheim Ducks, that's the team I'd want to play.
Can you guess the two teams that they in the Western Conference, that the only two teams that they were below 1.5 on?
Yep.
Over the last 3 years, Chicago, there's only two teams. So who do you think they would be? For the Blackhawks. So there's two teams that have more that have done better that have gotten more points out of Hawks games than the Hawks have gotten out of the game. So two of them. It really surprised me.
Edmonton's probably one of them because they never play well against Edmonton.
Edmonton, go across to Edmonton. There are 2 against Edmonton, so that's not. Yeah, it's not too high, but it's not. They're over 1.5 against Edmonton.
Vancouver,
nope. I thought that too. I would have thought Vancouver as well. Vancouver is nope. Vancouver is 2.1. San Jose is 1.6. So that's close. That's getting close to the middle, right?
But these are regular season numbers. These are not.
These are only regular season numbers, right? So, and I know that does change things, but I'll give them to you. Well, one of them, Peter, you should get.
Winnipeg.
You're kidding.
No, the Winnipeg Jets. Okay, second best record in the last 3 years of all the teams in the West against the Blackhawks. They're 1.4. So Blackhawks have 1.4, which means Winnipeg's 1.6 against Chicago. And then and the other team is the Minnesota Wild. In the regular season, the Wild have done really well against the Blackhawks, partially because they've been so pissed off from losing to them every year in the playoffs. Yeah. Because in the playoffs, they've gotten killed against them, right? But the truth is they're 1.3, so that's the best. That's the best. I mean, that's the hardest team. 1.3 Chicago, that's the hardest team. So there's no one, but like I said, there's 4 or 5 teams in the East that there are 1. Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. I mean, and I do think I'm a huge believer in matchups in the playoffs. Like, to me, I just think certain teams against certain teams, you can always win by predicting those games like that every year. All right, so let's get back to some. Okay, I got some other interesting numbers here too. I had a really good stat here for you guys. By the way, John Stevens from Northeastern signed a 2-year contract. The Islanders.
Now, isn't that the son of the LA Kings assistant coach?
I believe it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, not to put 2 and 2 together, but right now, I mean, Doug Waite, I think more than likely Doug Waite is not going to be the head coach of the New York Islanders next year. It sounds like this is an interim thing. He would probably go back to being the assistant general manager. I mean, there's no indications that he's interested in being the head coach on a long-term basis. So that opens up the Islanders to being one of those teams looking for a new head coach. And if Daryl Sutter doesn't retire in LA and John Stevens doesn't take over, wouldn't it be something if John Stevens was in the mix for the Islanders?
Yeah.
That's not out of the realm of possibility. I personally think, guys like Gallant and Hitchcock might be in the mix there. But
I think that'd be smarter for the Islanders. I mean, John Stevens is still relatively young, and I'm still kind of amazed by the John Stevens rise. I'm not a huge John Stevens guy. I know he's considered to be a great assistant coach out there. It's hard to tell when you're under Daryl Sutter, what you really are.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what he is, but I think that, in Philly, he was very okay. He was definitely too early, too soon in his career to be a head coach. Laviolette came in and look, everything was very much more organized, and you just saw the difference, right? It was a stark contrast between the two. That's a long time ago, though. So perhaps. Now, here's another fun stat for you. Since February 18th, the Jersey Devils have only beaten the Flyers and the Rangers. How about that? Isn't that crazy? So since February 18th, They haven't. I mean, the only teams, they've beaten both of them twice, but they've only beaten the Flyers and Rangers. It's just ridiculous. I mean,
That's bizarre.
I know.
Utterly bizarre.
Isn't that crazy? So some people are saying, all right, they're claiming the Devils are a tanking team, that they're trying to tank. I don't think they are. I really don't get that impression from them.
Well, here's an interesting statistic, and I believe he has 28 goals. Jonathan Marchessault was signed by the Florida. One of the few things that the Florida Panthers did right in the offseason was sign Jonathan Marchessault to a 2-year contract for $750,000 per year, and he's got 28 goals for the Panthers. Now you compare that and contrast that with Anze Kopitar, and I don't know the breakdown of money per goal, but I think he's making $14 million this year, and I think he's still in single digits. And don't get me wrong, Anze Kopitar is a great player, but it just seems to happen that way with most of the players who finally hit the mother lode on that big extension, that it almost gives them carte blanche. The pressure is off. Now they can sort of relax for a year because they've got their money. They've got their no-move clause. They can't move. They can't go anywhere. They're stuck.
I know.
There's no motivation there.
You're right. I mean, I already gave you my wild stat for Getzlaf too, but a couple more that I had from Monday. Matt Duchene in his last 17 games. You saw this one?
Yes, I saw it. I can't. And I was gonna ask. Tell him how much. Tell him.
1 goal, 0 assists in 17 games.
What the hell does that do? What the hell does that do to Joe Sakic and his trade value in the offseason? I think it tanks it.
Duchene has taken 23 shots in 17 games as well, which is ridiculous.
You know what? Colorado has been a dumpster fire for years.
Yeah.
They got, this is just the roosters coming home to nest, or whatever the expression is.
The chicken's coming home to roost. Yes.
Whatever it is.
Maybe roosters do that up in Canada, but down here roosters don't lay eggs. Mm-hmm.
And Colorado lays a lot of eggs.
Well, and okay, so Duchene has got 2 years left on his contract, $6 million per year, and basically he's mailed it in the last quarter of the season.
Yeah. How the heck is that possible? Talk about somebody who was pissed off. He's just pissed off, and the crazy thing is Duchene's a great guy. This is a really weird thing for Matt Duchene to do.
Yeah, but it's a toxic situation there.
I think this is just for him to be that frustrated tells you there's something way bigger that we don't even know about. as bad as we know it is. I love the quote from Jordy Ben playing the Canadians on Monday. On Tuesday, they play the Canadians. So they play the Stars. So Jordy Ben gets to play against his brother for the first time. They asked him what he thought about that. He's like, it's simple. When Jamie steps on the ice, I'll probably get yelled at to get off.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that.
That's good.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. Another stat I saw that was really kind of crazy is the Ottawa Senators have had first round picks in the over the last 10 years. Only 2 of them are in the NHL. The 2 of 10.
Wow.
Really?
First round picks. Isn't that a crazy number? I'm trying to find the exact. I had them in the notes, but I'm trying to pull up the exact thing here.
Well, I mean, Thomas Chabot made the NHL. I think he played 9 games this year for the Senators, and he is one of the best defensive prospects not in the NHL right now. So, I mean, that's one that has played and will play.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not looking at their list.
I'm trying to find an actual where I had it in my notes here. This because I thought this was just really crazy. But yeah, I'll pull that up. Oh, here we go. Between 2005 and 2014, the Ottawa Senators had 10 first-round picks. Just 2 remain with the team today. Okay. The 2005, it's not they remain with the team today. 2005, Brian Lee, gone, retired.
Yep.
2006, Nick Foligno, now in Blue Jackets.
Yep.
2007, Jim O'Brien, is in the AHL somewhere, maybe. 2008, Erik Karlsson. Okay, there you go. Big one. 2009, Jared Cowan. Traded for FNAF.
He could be done for his career. Degenerative hip problem.
All right, 2010, they didn't have a pick, actually. They traded it for Rundblad. 2011, Zibanejad.
Oh.
Now the Rangers.
Now in New York.
Yep. 2011, Matt Pompai. Remember him?
Matt Pumple. Who's on the Rangers? Yeah.
Waves claimed by the Rangers. Yep. 2011, Stefan Noesen,
who is now on the New Jersey Devils after being traded to Anaheim in the deal for Bobby Ryan.
2012, their other one, Cody Ceci. Here he is. There's another one that they have actually playing.
That's a pretty good pick.
2013, Curtis Lazar, traded to Calgary.
Yeah.
And 2014, they don't have a draft pick because this actually. In 2014, the trade that was traded for Bobby Ryan. So this goes from 2014. So close, but yeah, I just kind of like that is a lot of missed opportunities. And really, when you look, they did get Bobby Ryan out of that. They did get some other players out of that. So it's not that terrible, but for sure, yeah, a little bit crazy. Let's get to our NHL draft lottery simulator as well.
Well, let's just read down the schedule for tonight. The key games as the aforementioned Nashville Predators playing in Brooklyn against the Islanders. The Carolina Hurricanes are 7-0-3 in their last 10 games, and they're only 5 points behind.
No, this is their game in hand night too.
It's a game in hand against Detroit, and there you go. The organizations that hate each other, the Karmanos, Illich rivalry. And as you mentioned, at 7:30 on NBC Sportsnet, Blackhawks and the Lightning, and then the rest of the games I think are fairly inconsequential. But we'll just
Colorado is important. The Islanders in Nashville,
Blues and Coyotes.
Right. I mean, I think that there are some pretty big games there. But the interesting thing about my picks tonight, Detroit has actually owned Carolina. So for what it's worth, if Carolina has a streak going right now, so we'll see what happens. But over the last couple of years, Detroit has really has owned Carolina in a big way, and as have the Panthers owned the Sabres. So that's Florida could move their way up there. Tampa.
Yeah, but there's so much distance now between. I mean, the Panthers had their opportunity about 3 weeks ago, and they went. Yeah. They went 2-8-1, I think it was, with James Reimer in goal, which to me just illustrates that if that team goes as far as Roberto Luongo will take them. And if James Reimer is their number one goalie, they better get a hell of a lot better in front of him because they're not going to win consistently.
No, I'm with you 100%.
I totally agree.
Any guess on how many games are left how many days are left in the regular season?
The regular season ends April the 9th.
13.
Yeah, something like 13, I think. I had this
13 or 14, yeah. Or yeah, no, 13.
something like that up and then lose your spot as you did it. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. I'm like, yeah, jam. Because I was trying to get the draft lottery simulator. There's just craziness going on over here, guys. I apologize. All right, so let's go. I will have it's coming up now for what it's worth. Now that I blew it. There's a really I was surprised how we're left. But here we go. That's all right. You can start the drum roll, Mike. That's fine. Yeah. I got to bring this up. My producer, Russ the Chicken, is not doing his job today.
Choking.
Yeah,
There.
Russ. Yeah. All right, ready? Here we go. The winner is the Florida Panthers. We just spoke of.
Oh my goodness.
That's pretty good. Then followed that by the Buffalo Sabres, who love to
pick second.
That's incredible how often they pick second. And then in the NHL, they pick second a lot too, right? So followed by the Devils. Devils who are trying to lose, according to us, unless they're playing a Metropolitan Division team that's a rival of theirs. So there you have it. This would push the Golden Knights all the way down to 6th.
Wow. Well, yeah, because two teams jumped.
Yeah, right.
I mean, Florida is probably like around. Their odds are probably around 10th or 11th. So, I mean, they're closer to the playoffs than they are the bottom of the league. So.
Yeah, and they've we've seen some weird things in this. I mean, the Flyers have won twice, and they shouldn't have won twice. So, yep, indeed. So let's see. Anyway, yeah, that's all all the time we have for today. Peter, thank you so much for jumping on board.
My pleasure. Always fun to be here.
Awesome. We really appreciate it. You're a great addition whenever you're here. It's nice to hear somebody else's voice besides ours, too. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.